Hi, everyone. I'm Andy with Micron Ventures, and this is 5 Minutes with Andy, where we introduce the world to one of the portfolio companies, one of the founders of the portfolio companies that we invest in at Micron Ventures, and just learn a little more about the mind behind the madness in startup land. For this episode, we're talking with Ben Gibbs, the co-founder and CEO of Ready Robotics. Now, Ready Robotics is building the first truly scalable operating system for industrial robot arms. And we're here today to learn more about Ben and Ready Robotics. Before starting Ready, what is the most impressive thing you've built?
So I was blessed to have the opportunity to work at a place called Johns Hopkins Technology Ventures that is essentially the commercialization organization for Johns Hopkins University, which is the largest federally funded research institute in the country. And while I was there, I was one of the original team members that helped build out their incubator. So once upon a time, many years ago, Johns Hopkins was known for being notoriously bad at commercialization. And that was something the administration really wanted to change because there's some really amazing inventions that happen there from some of the brightest minds in the world. And they wanted to get more of that out into industry and out into the public. And so they made a concerted effort to really revitalize and overhaul the way that they did technology commercialization. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the contributing members there for that effort where they overhauled everything and, went from really business being considered a dirty word to spinning out 10 to 20 startups a year.
So you use the word infamous. Are they infamously good now? Or just straight up good?
I like to think that they're straight up good. We're actually one of those spin-outs ourselves. So our core technology is based on research that we spun out of Johns Hopkins University, out of the Whiting School of Engineering there.
Right on. Well, that's pretty cool. So you've built an incubator.
To be clear, I helped build it. I don't want to sit here and claim all of the credit. There were many.
Ben Gibbs, the only builder and of the incubator.
Many other people contributed to helping build that ecosystem, and it's one that's really thriving today. And one would be remiss to fail to mention the researchers there, the professors that actually invent all of the stuff that we had the chance to commercialize. But I remember those days fondly because I got to have private lectures from essentially super geniuses about science that was so cutting edge it wasn't even in the journals yet, which was pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Okay, so Ready spins out of this incubator that you built and ran, and you were the only person involved with. So Ready now is a couple of years old, something like that, 6 or 7 years old. You're in product, you're in the market. What does your product do now, and how is it unique?
So every robot arm manufacturer in the world has their own programming language and interface for using that language. And that interface is what's called a teach pendant. For those of you who have never seen one before, what it looks like is really an oversized graphing calculator from the 1980s.
The TI-82.
Yeah, TI-82 so like 100 buttons, tiny LCD screen. That's really what a teach pendant for many brands looks like. And then there's variations out there, right? Some are better than others, but all of those robot arm manufacturers have their own programming languages that are unique to those brands. And when I say unique, I mean, they're the only ones in the world that use it, right? So like Fanuc uses Carol, ABB uses Rapid, Yaskawa uses Inform, KUKA uses KRL, and on and on and on. And most of those are pretty much assembly level languages. You can do powerful things in them, but they're not really the type of programming language that a software developer or engineer would think of when they say programming language, like React or C++ or something like that. And so what we do at Ready is we have actually abstracted away all of those programming languages and created a common set of APIs on top of them. Now, those APIs are quite powerful. We have live control over these robot arms from a number of leading brands. So today we support Fanuc, ABB, Yaskawa, Kawasaki, Epson, Staubli, Universal Robots. We're actively integrating a few other brands. But APIs are best for software engineers and developers. And ultimately, we're focused on this idea of making it easy enough for anybody and everybody to work with these systems. So on top of those APIs, we've built a suite of end user facing productivity apps that make it very, very intuitive and easy for a operator on a factory floor to be able to interact with and program these systems without having to be a specialist in those esoteric programming languages. So the idea here is, just like PCs and phones have moved to the point where all of us can use them by just clicking buttons without having to truly know programming languages, we're essentially trying to bring that level of ease of use to robots as well, because I'm a firm believer that to really make something widespread and mainstream, you need to make it accessible to everybody, not just the specialists.
So industrial robot arms, so easy. A tech bro like me could do it.
Yes. So easy a VC can do it. And it's true. We've actually had VCs program these arms before. There's a massive shortfall of workers in US manufacturing today. Somewhere between 750 and 800,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs in the US today, a number that's expected to balloon to 2.2 million over the next decade, primarily driven by demographics. Baby boomers are retiring. Younger generations aren't replacing them at appropriate levels in the factory. And this is then exacerbated by some of the trends that have developed coming out of the pandemic and supply chain disruptions of the beginning of this decade, where there's more onshoring and localization occurring. So in 2020, there were roughly 140,000 jobs onshored into the US. In 2022, that number was 350,000.
Whoa.
And that's a number that is only continuing to increase as companies like Micron bring manufacturing and back into the US and build new fabs. People are building new factories all over the place. We don't have enough people in there. At the same time, we have other industries that have been dying out for a variety of reasons, like coal mining. In fact, we have a case study on our website where we take former coal miners in Eastern Kentucky, and over a 2-week period, they learn how to program 3 different brands of robots using our programming interface and our productivity apps. And this is something that's tremendously powerful, because many of these guys coming out of the coal mines, right? Like on some of them lack high school educations, they've never used a robot before, and their knee-jerk reaction is, I couldn't do this stuff. And the fact of the matter is, they're quite mechanically brilliant. Like, they don't know their way around big, dangerous machines, right? Like, they're well suited to be able to operate in factory environments, and they have very clever solutions to a lot of mechanical challenges that, by empowering them to be able to use robots without having to be a specialist in complicated programming languages, you can dramatically make them more productive right out of the gate. And that's something that I think is critically important to the manufacturing success, not only of this country, but the world, is this idea that you can create tools that are easy to use, i.e. robot arms, and make them accessible enough that you can dramatically increase productivity with them.
Yeah, that's one of my images when people ask me, it's like, what is venture capital in startups? Why do you guys exist? And why are startups able to be like so successful with small teams, like driving outsized success? And I think of it as like a highway, and there's like off ramps, and new technology builds like new off ramps. And it's really like a confluence of different technologies at a moment in time that enable new business models and new capabilities, right? And the way you just talked about industrial robots and kind of like all these pieces fitting together for that like why now story of Ready Robotics. As you look to the future, you're looking backwards, and we've seen kind of in hindsight the disruption of the last 5 years. Looking in the future 5 years, what will the world be saying in 5 years about Ready Robotics?
I hope what they're saying is that Ready Robotics was a catalyst for really unleashing massive growth in the robotics industry. Today, because of this fragmentation, my hypothesis is that it's very challenging to attract new talent into the industry, especially software developers who can create all kinds of new interesting solutions with robot arms. In fact, there are only hundreds of thousands of robot arms sold on an annual basis, which is a shockingly small number when you consider the millions upon millions of PCs and smartphones that get sold on an annual basis. And really what helped trigger that type of massive growth was ease of use, both for end users and ease of use for developers, providing a common platform that allowed them to create solutions that scaled across the industry. Imagine if there were 20 different operating systems in the computer industry or 20 different operating systems in the smartphone industry.
Yeah.
How challenging would that be to create software that could actually scale, right? And part of the power of software, why software is, quote, eating the world, is because you can have a very small team of people create products that just have an outsized impact on the world. And today, unfortunately, in robotics, that's incredibly challenging, because even if you create a solution that works well on, say, a Universal Robots cobot, that doesn't translate at all over to a Fanuc, over to a Yaskawa, over to a Stabli.
Yeah.
But with our software, Forge OS, it does, right? So you can build on top of our software, and it will just, whatever you build will just run on all of these different robot platforms. And as we add in new brands, you will have an even greater impact. And so that's really what I hope people say in 5 years, is that our software platform enabled them to create their own company in the robotic space, and do so without having to raise, 20 or 30 million dollars to actually get to the point where they could deploy a product into the market.
Last question. If you wanted listeners to learn one thing, what would it be, and where can they visit to learn more?
If you want to learn more about us as a company, you can find us at ready-robotics.com. In fact, we just launched a new website last week, so there's a bunch of updated information on there, and there's case studies and white papers really describing our technology in a much more elegant way than I can.
What's the most valuable white paper for folks to learn more about?
I would actually encourage people to go and watch the case study with the former coal miners out of Eastern Kentucky. That's actually in partnership with an organization called ECAMI, the Eastern Kentucky Advanced Manufacturing Institute, that we partner with, because ECAMI not only teaches them how to program robots with our software, but they also teach these people how to program CNC machines like lathes and mills using G-code, right? So they are on a regular basis graduating cohorts of individuals that can program both complex industrial machinery and industrial robots. And sending them off into an industry, as I said earlier, is starved for talent. So they are one of Eastern Kentucky's best kept secrets, and hopefully this will help make them less of a secret.